Welcome along. This is the Great Aussie Pubs Lounge Bar, the first episode, and we are broadcasting to you live, almost, no, it's recorded, on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. And I think it's the 22nd today, I think, Jodie, is that right? I'd be way off. 23rd, it's gone so quickly. Time flies when you're having fun. But today's topic is around not about so much having fun, but getting to a place where you can have fun again. And welcoming onto the show, Jodie Atkinson, a grief recovery specialist and author of the book My Grief.
Have you met my grief? Yeah.
Have you met my grief? Sorry, Jodie. And
right.
and Jodie, I've got a quick bio here, which I'll just read so people at home know a little bit more about you. So
Sure.
you're an author, speaker, and grief recovery specialist, as mentioned, a personal trainer, fitness instructor, and health coach. Passionate about opening up conversations around loss and grief, which is important. Now, you spend your time writing to assist grievers, speaking to grievers within the community, and facilitating programs and workshops for people and groups to deal with losses of all kinds with knowledge and awareness that healing and recovery from significant loss is available. So a lot of people, at home that might be out at pubs as well and come home, that they'll have gone to the pub with the idea that they want to drink away their sorrows, that they want to get away from these issues of loss that they've had in their life. And I mean, it isn't just about losing a loved one, is it? Loss comes in many forms. Is that right?
It certainly does. Loss is, I think, when you talk about grief, people will think grief is a result of a death.
Yeah.
But grief is actually a result of loss, and loss can be a relationship breakdown. It could be a beloved pet that passes away, or a decision has to be made about the pet's health and ongoing care. There may be people who are struggling with not being able to fall pregnant. That is an intangible loss. There's nothing has, there's not been an event as such, but something that is not able to happen for that couple. Loss could be job loss. It could be a retirement. People look forward to retirement, but suddenly they get to retirement and their whole world has been wrapped up in this career. Suddenly that day-to-day habit of getting up and going to work every day stops, and that can come out of the blue and be quite a unexpected type of loss.
Yeah.
And then you've got other losses, like what's been created with a pandemic. Look, we had lockdowns with COVID-19. People couldn't go to work. People couldn't go out and socialise. Children couldn't go to school. So there's a lot of loss associated with a pandemic that people may not necessarily equate to grief. They just know that they don't feel right about this situation, but giving it a name and saying you're actually grieving a break in your normal pattern of behaviour, and that is loss. Yeah.
Can any type of loss lead to some sort of breakdown if it isn't understood, or if it isn't? I mean, things can go downhill rapidly or not so rapidly if there isn't some sort of healing that takes place. Is that right?
Unresolved grief is everywhere. People will tend to distract themselves perhaps from what they're feeling. It's uncomfortable sitting with feelings of loss and grief. And those feelings will be different for every individual. So I could rattle off a few, but they may not be something that every single person experiences. But if they're uncomfortable and they don't make you feel good, quite often people will associate, other behaviours to try and distract themselves from feeling that discomfort. And what you're suggesting is, having grief just hang around, because it's not resolved. It just kind of gets buried under other things. And then something will happen, and it'll be like a pain point a word or a discussion someone's having, maybe a song plays on the radio, or a smell will trigger an emotion associated with that loss, and all those feelings will inevitably come up again.
Yeah. Well, is it a fair enough call to make that women tend to be better at dealing with loss than blokes?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, traditionally, I guess women have been seen and more to be the people who talk things through
Yeah.
more than blokes. But it might come down to the fact that there are there's a bit of programming around our way of dealing with these uncomfortable feelings when they come up. I mean, loss and grief are going to be a big part of our life, because we're all going to have relationships. We have pets, we have children, we have jobs. If you care about anything and you love something and you have relationships, you are going to experience loss of some sort. Now, because it's an uncomfortable feeling, people will want to try and make you feel better by giving you some sort of platitude or, silver lining type of comment in some cases. And there's a few myths of grief, that are myths of loss, that we talk about in grief recovery. And one of those is don't feel sad or bad.
Yeah.
And of course, the person is going to feel whatever it is they're feeling, whether you tell them to feel that way or not. They're going to have those feelings. Another feeling that they might be, another myth that you might hear is, it's okay, or you're still young enough, you'll meet somebody else, or you can go and get another dog, or you'll get another job. It's that not really allowing the feelings of the loss that's occurred to be explored and dealt with before kind of trying to replace that loss with something else.
I see.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you might have where people will go, well, look, if we just let Joe go off on his own and have his little quiet time, he just needs to be alone, let him be. And maybe Joe doesn't want to be alone. Maybe Joe finds being alone really, really distressing and isolating and overwhelming, and all he wants is his mates around him. But
Yeah.
we have this perceived idea that grieving alone is something that people should do. It's not necessarily everyone's way of coping.
Sure. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a Do you sort of see why, like, sometimes these might be things why blokes and women, I don't want to kind of get into a generalization about
Yeah.
that, because I think there are people out there who are just generally uncomfortable with this stuff.
Okay.
Another one you might hear is that time is a healer. Just give it time.
Yeah.
And you certainly wouldn't tell someone with a broken arm to just give it time, would you?
Not
You know,
unless it's fixed a bit and you've got a
you
plaster.
Yeah, they've gone and sought medical attention. You
Yeah.
wouldn't tell someone with a gaping wound, look, just go sit over there quietly and just elevate it and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's the wounds we don't see that are, often the hardest to talk about and explore and provide that support. So somebody that is grieving or depressed or anxious is having some sort of trauma,
Yeah.
an event has occurred to bring that on, they may need some help to support them through that,
Sure.
just like a physical injury. Be strong's a big one. I've just got to be strong for everyone else, or someone has to be, someone's told they have to be strong. Or I think as an individual, we hear that so much that it becomes part of our vocabulary as well. And we start saying, I just have to be strong, even though everything in your body is screaming, I'm not strong. I don't feel strong, and I don't want
Yeah.
to be strong.
So for many blokes, I'll just get back onto the blokes thing just quickly. We do hear
Yep,
the saying, harden up, harden up, mate. It should be right and all that
exactly.
stuff. But
Yeah.
I hear a lot now in the community about vulnerability being an important part of the grieving process. So if you're vulnerable enough to say, I'm in a bit of pain here, I'm experiencing anxiety, and you talk to somebody like yourself or a psychologist or somebody that's specializes in dealing with these sorts of problems and can walk you through, and is it a question of walking them through what's actually happening to them so that they can consciously be aware of their feelings and emotions? Is that the case?
Yeah, I think, look, feelings and emotions associated with loss are can be really uncomfortable and confronting. For me, they were big. They were big and they were intense, and I was actually very scared to be alone with them. And this is why I wrote my book, because the way grief showed up in my life was completely completely unprepared. Nothing that I had ever gone through with losing loved ones in the past like prepared me for losing my husband.
Yeah.
And when you have those intense emotions, and like I said, it might be the same for everybody, but a lot of people I've spoken to have expressed similar experiences. Um, it is scary. And being able to say, I'm not coping, I'm feeling like this, I'm having panic attacks, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling like I'm losing my mind.
Mm.
They're not easy things to say,
No.
but when other people share their vulnerability, and this is the thing that helped me through my stuff, and why I wrote my book and why I'm really passionate about this, is because when people say, me too, about I felt that way, I went through that experience, I couldn't believe how I felt, you're giving other people permission to say, well, actually, I'm not coping very well either. I
Yeah.
think I need help. I'm really struggling with these emotions. So by being vulnerable and authentic about where we're at, I think we give other people permission to do the same. We're saying it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's really important that we share those messages as much as possible,
Yeah.
because trying to keep it all inside and just keep busy and keep being strong and trying to hold it all together for everyone else, it's exhausting,
Sure.
and it's not particularly productive.
And sometimes we just need to say, I need a bit of help.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just boils
Yeah.
down to that. Just, I need
Yep.
a bit of help here.
And I think, depending on your where you sit on this, I think some people would view strength as being able to say, I need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. For
rather
sure.
than just trying to plow on without that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you want to talk more a bit about your story and losing your husband? That was not even that long ago, was it? Really?
No, it's just not quite 2 years ago.
Right.
I lost my husband to pancreatic cancer after a very, very short, like from time of diagnosis to losing him was only 37 days. And it was pretty intense and brutal, and the most devastating thing I've ever gone through. Um, and I learned about grief through that. As I said, I was completely unprepared for how it would show up in my life, and I had no idea that I would feel like my whole world, every aspect of my world would just be collapsing around me, really. So I wrote my book because it was sort of like, if I feel like this, there must be other people out there, because we don't talk about this stuff.
No.
If how is it that I find out that grief can look like fear, anxiety, panic attacks, loss of identity? Because I didn't know it. But when I've since talking to people, and I've since found information that I was searching for, like at the time I couldn't find it, but now I'm sort of finding it a little bit more.
Mm.
Those are very real feelings that people go through. And if we talk about it, at least we're helping other people go, this is how it could show up for you, and
Mm.
you're at least somewhat prepared, and you're
Yeah.
not wondering that you're just unraveling.
Yeah.
Um, and like my biggest thing was I was losing my mind. Like I'm going nuts, and
Mm.
questioning my sanity, questioning my identity.
Yeah. So, look, even going back 5 years ago, there was a lot of stigma around that type of process where people might call that a mental illness or a mental disorder,
Yeah,
and now normalizing it, or at least making it, not normalizing it, but making it common to
normalizing
be.
is a great word.
Is that the
Yeah,
right word?
I love normalizing.
Yeah.
Normalizing, I think when you normalize something for someone, it absolutely just it's such a sigh of relief to be able to go, I'm not alone in this, and other people
Yeah.
get me. Like I'm part of this. Is this happens to other people.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. And I actually talk about normalizing in my book and saying, how do I help a griever who's going through a really hard time? If it's somebody that's lost a child, or they've lost their husband, or perhaps they have lost their job, finding a book or an article or gifting them something that sort of says, look, this is something that I'm aware of. I found this really helpful.
Yeah.
And giving that to them so that they can read it and look at it and listen to a TED talk or something like that, that might just be the thing that just allows them to feel less alone, less isolated in what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
So yeah, normalizing is a great word, Jonathan, definitely.
Okay, cool. So I just wanted to just briefly just go back into what it is that you can offer people. You offer correct action steps, choices, and tools to work through unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations to complete unfinished emotional business. So
Yes,
it is that unfinished emotional business, isn't it? That is the
it is.
that stands out as the loss, because you've lost that opportunity to complete what it is you wanted to complete.
Absolutely. The grief recovery method is an experiential program. It's evidence-based, and it basically allows a griever to deal with the unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations of a relationship breakdown, a death, whatever type of loss that might be. Now, when we're talking about unmet hopes, dreams, expectations, we're talking about, the expectation that you're going to live a long, healthy life into retirement with the love of your life.
Yeah.
Or it could be, a child you don't get to take home from hospital.
Yeah.
There's all those expectations of what being a parent is going to look like.
Yeah.
And suddenly they don't come to be realized. It's the hope of something different, better, or more. And it's the past that you're grieving, but also the future that you don't have.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of layers to it. And what I do is help grievers finish that emotional business, even with a divorce. Like a divorce will kind of deal with the financial and maybe the child custody and visitation and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really deal with the emotional side of that relationship breaking down and the layers involved with being in a relationship
Of
for so
course.
long, having children in that relationship and all of that. So being able to provide someone an opportunity to be able to deal with that emotional stuff and
Yeah.
move forward
Mm.
in a way that creates a greater capacity for happiness and well-being,
Mm.
and hopefully heal enough to be able to have future relationships that are not impacted by unresolved grief of a previous loss, relationship breakdown, etc.
Yeah, because there's so many aspects to a relationship, apart from the house, the kids, the sex, all the emotional stuff that you just can't have anymore because she or he is not there for you. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and it's important stuff. It's
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
Intimacy and connection, like the loss of that, loss of trust.
yeah,
There's layers and layers and layers within that, and it's a lot to work through and a lot to process. And when there are uncomfortable feelings and you just get sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, what do? Go and distract yourself with something else fun and less kind of heavy, and
sure.
kind of bury it under a whole heap of stuff, or go
Yeah,
fall into workaholism, or maybe you start Netflix binging, or with things that we call STIRBs. They're short-term energy relieving behaviors as a
yeah.
way of coping with those uncomfortable feelings that are come up for us when we don't resolve those issues.
Can addiction
So,
come up, like smoking or drinking and things like that? Like
oh
serious
yeah,
addiction?
you
Yeah,
might lean on
yeah,
alcohol a little bit heavily. You might smoke. You might online gambling, online shopping,
yeah,
anything that kind of I went to the dog park. I mean, that's not considered a particularly unhealthy habit, but
yeah,
when you're doing that as opposed to doing other things. It's one of those things. It's a short-term energy relieving behavior. You know, I took the dog off to the dog park. That's my happy place. I'm going there, and that was my way of getting away from stuff. So it doesn't necessarily come as a perceived negative behavior, but exercise. I mean, exercise in excess is not a good thing. But so you know, anything in excess is unhealthy. So it's about recognizing that we are using these things as a way of managing and coping with the feelings that we're not ready to deal with yet, but at some point we're probably going to have to, if we want to be able to move forward and not keep carrying those heavy loads with us.
Well, it's been lovely chatting to you. Can you hold up your book just so people
yes,
can see the butterflies?
Have you met my grief? Yes.
Cool. And the butterflies, they signify something metaphorical, I'm guessing. You told me.
There's a couple of layers there. Like my husband's favorite color was blue. And I always had this vision of a blue cover, like blue on the cover for him. And with the butterfly, I saw a book with another, had a butterfly on the cover, and it spoke to me. And I actually bought a blue butterfly bush and planted that in Craig's memory. And I also understand, and not everybody will connect with this idea, but the idea of butterflies as spirit messengers.
They mean change, don't they? Is that what they mean? Change? Of course.
And there is that too, that, you know, transformation from, you know, something that was, I think through my book, there's a journey, like it starts off where it's, you know, very real and raw with his, you know, the diagnosis and then Craig's passing away, and then the journey through the book of, you know, navigating that new normal and that transition to where I am now today, you know, having dealt with a lot of my emotional business and put down a few rocks that I was carrying around with me as a result of losing him, and trying to, you know, have a greater capacity for happiness in my life again.
Beautiful.
Which I've found, you know, helping other grievers to be able to achieve that has become something that I feel really passionate about.
Excellent. And people listening to this can find you and get some advice and book a session in with you.
Yes.
Well, now
I have details if you need them.
You can do that over Zoom. You do that over Zoom as well?
I can do it over Zoom. Like, so if people interstate or who are rural can get in touch with me. I have a website, and I don't know whether you want to pop that in the comments underneath this at some point.
We'll do it in there. You could just mention it here as well. So
it is www.Jodie- so that's the middle dash Atkinson.com.au.
Excellent. We'll put it in the comments section or on the post itself. Jodie, lovely to talk to you. Grief recovery specialist, trademarked as well. Love that.
Yes.
Look, you know, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jonathan. Like, any opportunity I can have to speak to people and let them know that there are so many ways that people can be supported through a really tough time. Each individual will hopefully find what works for them. But it's just, for me, it's just another way of being able to be a support, a voice for people. It's a way of normalizing their behavior and thoughts and actions and emotions, and be able to say, you know, there's people here that want to help you.
Awesome. Well, this has been the Great Aussie Pubs Lounge Bar. Thank you, Jodie. We'll catch you all another time.
Thank you.